What's up, guys? Kyle, Draft Beer Dispense. Today we are talking about the secondary CO2 regulator. This one is from Taprite. There are a few different brands out there that we use when we're doing our commercial installs, but I'm going to talk about this one. Pretty much the same, a lot of the same things you would do on a primary regulator you do on this, but these guys are used just before the keg or where you're going to put your air line into a keg. This one is set up where it's got a shut-off valve on it, and I typically like to use these, one brand or one type of beer with its own secondary regulator, especially in the craft world, because you want to make sure everything's like precise and that it pours correctly. But anyways, how do you adjust this? This is a front knob on this Taprite one, and to adjust it you want to pull it out. You'll hear it click, and then right or clockwise is increasing pressure, counterclockwise is decreasing pressure. When you find like the right pressure where you're at, you can basically take that knob that you pulled out and push it in, and it's not going to move, and it's going to be set at where it needs to go. So this is the regulator itself, the gauge, and this is the shut-off valve. Usually when I set these, I set them with this in the shut-off basically position like this, because I want to make sure that it fills and I have it at the exact pressure before I release this, because once you release this, it's going to fill wherever it's going to the keg with that pressure, but I want to make sure everything's good to go before we release it. So adjust it to the pressure that you want by pulling it out, set it, push it back in, then release this down into your keg. But typically something I like to do before with these guys, if I'm taking my red airline to my coupler, so that's basically what this line will run to. I like to actually bleed the coupler out and get all that air, regular air, so it's just pure CO2 that's going into our beer, so we don't, compromise the beer by any means. But this red airline is a 5/16 ID, 9/16 OD for Micromatic, and that runs into the coupler, the air side of the coupler down here. So that's what feeds our coupler with the gas that it's needed with the CO2, but that's what the airline comes into. Now this fitting here that you see, this is a 1/4 inch hose fitting, and typically I like to use a 1/4 inch ID braided. It's this white tube. It's designed for higher pressure, but I like to use this because this tells me my lines where they're coming in into my regulator, and then this is obviously exiting. This is a higher pressure, so usually I set my primaries between 80 and 100 psi. This is going to be anywhere between 10 to 12 or maybe less than that, depending on the type of beer that you're dispensing. That's why we use this type of hose too, but it's also color coordinated, so I know it's a lower pressure that's leaving my regulator. On the back of these regulators, you see they've got some holes that are set up here. I like to use, any type of machine screw. Like these are 1/4 inch ones, from anywhere from like a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch, or some self-tapping, stainless steel screws, from usually about 3/4 inch to 1 inch. That's what I like to use on these, but that's where you mount it onto the back of your kegerator or inside of a cooler walk-in, but that's what you would use there. And sometimes you may need to tighten these up. It's got a little Allen wrench on it, but this can be a little loose sometimes. But that's pretty much what these secondaries are used for. Again, they're used to dispense the right, CO2 pressure to your keg when you're ready to dispense your beer. You'll use these anywhere from a kegerator that has multiple kegs, to a direct draw system, to a remote system where you're just trying to get that right, precise, CO2 pressure on your keg. But yeah, that's the secondary CO2 regulator. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.